Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. You are listening to a podcast by Pastor Eric Siepen and Pastor Andy Littleton. If you enjoy Faith Over Breakfast, we encourage you to rate it on the Apple Podcast app, on Spotify, or Google Play. Thank you and enjoy the podcast.
Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. My name is Andy Littleton, and I'm a pastor in Tucson, Arizona at Mission Church, and I'm sitting with my friend Eric from The Village.
That's right, The Village.
And also here in Tucson.
Yeah, we're Tucson people. You were born in Tucson? No, you weren't born in Tucson.
I wasn't.
You were Bisbee.
My family moved here when I was six. And we were returners to Arizona from my dad's side of the family is from Bisbee, Arizona, but I was born in Oregon.
That's right. I was like, you know what? He was on the coast somewhere. Can't remember. I was going to say California after I said Bisbee. But yeah,
that's a whole story right there.
Did you know people from Oregon are rainbirds? Have you heard this phrase?
Rainbirds?
Yes, not snowbirds.
Oh, sure. I hadn't heard that, but that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess they call themselves rainbirds. Anyway, continue.
Well, I actually wanted to briefly at the
make
front
a promotional
end of this podcast. Speaking of how I was born in Oregon,
that was a good transition. I planned that whole thing.
You didn't, but I love it. And Bisbee and Tucson. I actually, if you're looking for a Christmas present for your dad, or anyone who has a dad,
yes.
So there's a pretty wide range right there.
Yeah, it covers everybody.
So I wrote a book called The Little Man about it was a travel memoir in which I explored my relationship with my father through a road trip between small town Oregon and Tucson, Arizona, and small town Bisbee, Arizona.
And it involves you purchasing a truck.
And I purchased an old truck. And so if themes like like old trucks, small towns, fatherhood
Quiet
interests
fathers.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then even more than that, I found by surprise that the book, it became about exploring our relationships to kind of quiet or seemingly insignificant people.
Okay.
So any of those themes you might connect with. And I've actually heard from men, women, young and old, who have really connected with this book in ways that surprised me. And so The Little Man, if you have to type in The Little Man Littleton,
The Little Man Littleton,
because it'll pull
Amazon.
it up. Yeah, at Amazon.com.
We'll put a link in the show notes.
Yeah, I really think somebody in your life might enjoy it. So yeah, give it a go for Christmas.
Yeah,
and thank you for being open to that. But Eric, remind us where are we headed today?
Well, guys, we answer the questions. We answer what kind of projects we enjoyed. We answer what we learned for this year, and what we hope for next year.
Yep.
And you know what? It's a good wrap-up podcast. I think it's actually relatively intimate, and you get to hear a little bit of our inside thoughts and heart. So I think it's good.
And I'm quite sure that that some of you might connect with some of that.
Yeah, I think so. I think you will. And Andy, I just want to say thank you for another year.
Yeah,
podcasting with me.
Absolutely. I love doing this. So thank you for not letting me out of it. And,
all right,
because I do end up enjoying it. So thank you. I'm always like, can I do this again? And you're like, I really want to do this. And so thank you for your commitment to the time.
Yeah, thank you. All right. The front end.
That's it.
All right. So, hey, Andy, it's good to see you. And you said you have 2 questions. It's end of the year. This is probably our last podcast for the year.
Yeah, I have 2 questions.
2 questions. I'm nervous. I don't even know what these 2 questions are.
Well, they're for me too, and I will say I have not thought of the answers yet.
Good.
This isn't an unfair
advantage
that I have.
You're
I'm not coming in. Me. I'm not cornering you.
You're not going to ask me to describe infralartarianism or anything like that.
I'm just going to ask you to pronounce it.
Okay, it's hard. It's really hard.
So no, I not at all. So okay, we're toward the end of the year 2023.
Yeah, it's December 8th or 9th, something like that.
It's December 8th or 9th.
Yeah. I don't know what day it is even.
It's been, I really wonder how we're going to reflect on this year. I was just, hey, bonus story. I was just at a stamp and coin shop because I came I ended up with some envelopes of old stamps. Turns out they're worthless, but I thought I'd stop in and just see. And the guy was telling me why he always looks through the stamps. And one time he looked through boxes and boxes of somebody's stamps, everything, whatever, meaningless. And the very bottom of the last box, which he almost didn't even open because it was a box within a box and he hadn't found anything, he found an envelope that was sent from Hawaii the morning of or the day of the bombing at Pearl Harbor.
Oh, wow.
And it turns out it was probably dropped off the night before. So a guy had gone over to another town. Nothing would have gone out that early from the base, but he was in another town where some of the military guys would go have a drink or something. And so he'd probably gotten off base and done some stuff. And he dropped a letter to his parents. And he had said in there something about, I have a feeling we might have some trouble with the Japanese. So that letter mails right before the bombing of Pearl Harbor.
That's insane. That's a really cool story.
And so it's got the stamp, it's got all the markings, it's definitely real, and he auctioned it for thousands of dollars, right? Because it's this like important piece of history.
Wow.
That was the very last thing in the bottom of
That's
this.
really cool.
So yeah, why do I say that? I don't know. It's just cool. And because sometimes here's why I was saying it. Here we are at the end of the year 2023, 2024. There's all sorts of anxieties and fears. And who knows, someday somebody may listen back to this and go, wow, that's what those guys were thinking about? They had no idea.
They had no idea.
Or this will just be another humdrum episode lost in the sea, in the ether. Okay. So here's my two questions. Or I'll just start with one. What's your favorite thing you got to work on or build or create this year in 2023?
What was my favorite thing that I got to work on or create? Oh, that's really hard because this was kind of a sabbatical year. So,
well, it doesn't have to be part of your job.
I did like a lot of different things in a lot of areas that I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that I get the most reward out of is that in my entryway, I finally redid it. So because it had been tiled and never finished.
Okay.
So there was no baseboards and hadn't been painted, and it's just. But so I did that, and that was it. But I put a coat rack, this really cool old wood coat rack, on the wall.
Yeah.
And on it, I got little cut license plates.
Yeah.
And then I wrote Seneca House, and it's all different colored license plates.
Yeah.
And I walk by it, and it just makes me happy every time I walk out the door.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of projects, but that one I see all the time, and it's just like, oh, that's so cool. I'm glad I did that.
Oh, sweet.
So that's the one project, I think. I mean, I did a lot of projects this year, so that's not as fair as last year I would have only had one.
Okay. Do you want to add one more?
I think probably the other favorite project with like the village is that at the beginning of the year, I did a whole like sabbatical preaching series on discipleship, and I got to spend time doing my favorite sermons, what I want to preach, what I want to talk about in regards to discipleship. So that was fun.
Yeah, cool. Okay. I like that. Okay. And let's see. So the next question is, what's something I know that it's been a long year, so I would even say as we land, the year is coming to an end, that you would say you've learned this year that's kind of new to you.
Well, I'm going to say, how about you answer the first question to give me a little space to think that one out, to articulate it well.
Okay. So
the one project that you just like
favorite thing I created. So yeah, I too have a variety of things, but I think, and I believe I've mentioned this on here, but during my sabbatical time that was a little bit clunky. One of the things I ended up doing was I took a memoir class, and I began to write out my journey, my story, you could say, of friendship. And there's a painful story in there where my best friend, who I met in middle school, ends up dying in his 20s and tragically on the way to his wedding. And that's with his fiance. They died in a rollover accident. And it's a terrible story, one I haven't really been ready to engage.
Yeah.
But I feel ready. I feel it's time.
Yeah.
His dad said to me, I went over to their house, and he started playing his old guitar just this past year, and he kind of said, hey, it's time. It's time to reflect and open up about this. We kind of have all waited a long time. So I decided to begin writing what I hope will be a memoir about this.
Yeah.
And the beginnings of it are, when I met him and the friendships leading to it were the parts I felt like I could write now before I do kind of a trip that is meant to kind of elicit memory. And so I started writing about my childhood and middle school friendships, and that was, I think it's interesting. I got feedback from other people in the class, and they want to hear a lot more about even those pre-best friend friendships. It seemed that there was something in there that's pretty universal, the ways that we relate with friends and lose them and fail them. And it seems that a lot of people, maybe everybody, has that stuff in the back of their mind somewhere. And I've come to discover we don't have any kind of ceremony in our culture to grieve or process the loss of a friend. And I think that's something that I'm really interested to continue working on. Yeah. So that's mine.
So your thing is so much more deep and rich, and mine's like an entryway with some words on it.
Well, if I gave you a second, if I had to give a second, it's that I've been working on this house that our church bought, and that has been to me this year a really it's been a gift, like a creative outlet. Sure. And I would say my office in there is like a mini Andy museum. Okay. It's an office, but all the little nostalgic, quirky things, and I really like it in there. I like my little office.
That's cool.
And so that's been a fun thing that I didn't realize how much I would enjoy having my little mini Andy museum that people can sit in with me and talk about stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go. There's a more entryway-ish one.
Yeah, I like that. So the other question that you asked me, and you'll answer yourself too, is what's the one thing you learned?
Well, yeah, or something as the year is winding down that you have learned this year.
Well, I mean, I turned 51 this year, and this will be the first year that there was one whole year basically where Rod wasn't pastor of the village. Yeah. He and I worked together for 22 years. And so there's sort of, this year was a shift for me, and just kind of contemplating what it looked like to be the older person. Oh, yeah. In a church though there are people that are older than me, I kind of hold this new position. Yeah. So I think what have I learned? I learned just in reflecting, I realized that so much of how my life has gone and how my wife and I have done things together. So it really is side by side. We were so idealistic and very all in. Yeah. And I think when you're young, even when everything is crazy and you got littles, and if you have this mission or this vision in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, you're like, I can change the world. Like something I can, I think there's this deep craving to create something, to build it, to know that it's meaningful and it's going to have impact. And so I think I have spent 22 years doing that, like just really being all in. And I think one of the things I have learned this year is that no matter what you do in this world, no matter what huge stories, and I've been part of like a lot of huge stories in people's lives, like massively miraculous transformations and healings, that it's still one degree of glory to the next. Like you can end up watching a person turn their life around 360. And yet when you sit with them, you realize, wow, you're just so broken. And I'm so broken that even though we have moved from, living in darkness and heading into darkness, coming into the light isn't just like everything is fixed.
Yeah.
Meeting Jesus and being transformed is this one glory to the next. People call it sanctification, but it's just this transformation that happens to you slowly through the Spirit. And it's messy and it's hard and it's not that idealistic.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's like the joy of holding a little baby and all the fun parts of a little baby, and you think it's like so cool, but the fun that little baby keeps you up at night and you can barely sleep and you're just delirious and you just want everything to stop. Like that is life.
Yeah.
And I think it's making that transition. I don't want to lose the like idealistic sense of things. I don't want to believe that, nothing's ever going to change. People aren't going to change. Life's not going to be different. I can't create things that are meaningful. I don't want to be there. I don't want to be like depressed. At the same time, I want to have a more realistic, it's not like whatever I'm doing in life is not the best thing ever. And it's not, it's going to all be, it's not going to last. Like this building that we're in, which was miraculous, is not lasting. Right. It's people that last. And really the thing that I look forward to now is just like, well, I hope to see people in their fullness, right? When they're resurrected, like to say, I knew you, and you knew me, and now I see you in a way that like in your fullness. And I hope to, and I was part of that story a little bit in the beginning. So I don't know. I've learned that it's just like, okay, I can't, I think I used to have all of these ideas about how the church needs to change, and there's all these philosophies about the church, and now I'm just like, okay. Yeah, I do think there's a lot wrong, and I think people can talk about all that and create new things and try to be different and try to, move people towards Jesus in a culture that's always changing. I'm cool with that.
But the whole idea of we're going to get it perfectly right and...
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Or that's even the point.
Yeah. Yeah. We all get old and die. That's partly what I learned this year.
Something interesting in there that I just thought of was, so you were talking about your entryway Seneca House coat hanger. And I've heard many times, and I relate to this, that as a pastor, sometimes it's nice to just make something that you can just finish.
Oh, yeah. And that you can say it's done.
Yeah, because often, well, almost always with people, it's never done. But what you just said about this building won't last, but people will last, is it's almost as if the things in our life that feel lasting that we work on now are actually the ones that don't.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why the pressure isn't high on them. And the things that feel like they just will not resolve in this life, the inner lives of people, and
right,
are what God says last.
Right.
That these people do have eternal life, and that's just an interesting thing to grapple with and consider. It is,
and it's. I guess the other thing I've learned, just to add to all this, is I've begun to embrace and just own that being a pastor is actually really hard, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, there's not an easy version of it.
Yeah, there's not an easy version, and
Not that's worth doing.
It's a calling, and it's gut-wrenching and shaping in ways that I did not understand and probably still don't.
Yeah. Yeah, you just have to grow into it. I'm 10 years behind you, almost exactly. And
yes, right. Yeah.
I'm 41. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was driving up to the class that I'm taking yesterday with two of our younger interns and talking to them about a kind of a ministry situation that happened and reflecting on they were asking questions about it. And one of them's 5 years younger than me. One of them's almost 20 years younger. And so, but just realizing like how much I've changed in the last 10, 11 years in ministry. And you just have to do it. You just have to go through this process. There's no fast track. You just have to move slow. And then somebody in our church said, and this was really meaningful to me, that they had suggested to somebody who was talking about their experience with me years ago, and they said, well, he's changed and not perfected, but he's grown. And I thought, man, that's not just something that pastors need advocated for. That's just a human thing. Like we just have to go through this maturing process. We just have to. You can't. There's no shortcut. You just have to plod along. To get where you are, I've got to do 10 more years.
Yeah. It's okay.
That's what
You'll always be 10 years behind.
I'm always going to be 10 years behind.
At least in years, maybe not in maturity.
And someday at your funeral, I'm going to go, man, he's 10 years ahead.
I'll start slowing down then.
Yeah.
And be like, I caught up with him.
Yeah, and then at some point we'll be caught up.
Yeah. That's a good question. It's a good question. What have you learned this year? I would answer that, and then I'll throw a third question on it, and we can wrap it up.
Okay.
So what have you learned this year? Like as it wraps down, what's the big takeaway for the year?
Well, I'm gonna give a quick recent one, and then maybe a bigger one as I think about the bigger one. This is just a bridge one right now that I'm giving you, but I'm glad to be taking some classes right now. I was a little unsure, so I'm working on a degree with a couple of the interns of our church, Cruz and Jared, up in Phoenix, Missional Training Center. And yeah, Mike Goheen, our teacher, was just talking about the uniqueness of the American story, and that we are the only major nation that was actually born during as the Enlightenment was occurring, that we were born during that time, and that because of that the American story is carried by kind of two gospels in a way. The gospel of that Christianity was in there in people's minds due to the era before, but also the Enlightenment story, that those two are like two horses hitched to a cart together, pulling it, and that we are the only nation on earth whose founding story is like that. We're utterly unique in that experience and being birthed during that time, as far as like major formative nations.
Yeah, no, it's so true.
And that was a new realization for me. I hadn't thought that through. I hadn't seen, nobody had ever pointed that out to me. So that was that helped me understand, even in a way of having compassion, but also looking at myself and going, I am part of this.
Yeah, product of the Enlightenment and the sort of Judeo-Christian ethic, gospel-driven thing.
I think I would have said, well, the whole world went through that, but not every nation was formed out of it.
Yeah, that's true. And to throw a third horse on there, it's so big. Mm-hmm. So there's the bigness of this country to go along with those two. So the way those kind of two ideas infiltrate different regions is very fascinating as they develop over 100 years or so. Yeah.
So that's kind of a historical, theological thing. And then I think the other thing and this is going to be, it's already proving to be quite difficult for me to apply. But in my kind of sabbatical time, I think the big thing I'm learning is just that I need to be more open with my own needs. And that is a very confusing thing for me, because I have, my brain goes back and forth on, but I'm in a serving role. We're called to follow Jesus, lay our lives down. But also the idea of allowing others to have that role in my own life. And certain people, I think you would qualify for this, Eric. I feel like, well, you're a fellow pastor, so I might offer that more to you. But there are other people in my life who I don't do that with. And so just learning that this needs to be more of a shared journey. And I think that's gonna be a very complicated shift for me, because I've lived a life of not thinking this way. But yeah, just learning how critical that is for living a life that is healthy, shared, where love is reciprocal, where community is deep.
Yeah.
I think that's entered my mind. I'm not going to say I've learned it.
Yeah. It is a thing you are pondering and trying to apply. Yeah, no, that's good. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. Wrap up question. It's not just winding down a year, it's opening up a year. Yeah. And what is one thing that you are really hopeful about as you step into next year?
Hopeful about.
Or hope to see develop.
Hopeful about.
Yeah, something along those lines.
Okay. Well, can I answer both of those?
Yeah, go for it.
Hope to see develop and hopeful about.
And then I'll answer it and we'll wrap this up.
I am hopeful about. I have been thinking a lot about the fact that in our culture, I think especially in more post-Christian segments like Tucson, but I think even more broadly, that there is more of an openness to God religious experience. I'm not saying this like people are trying to go to church or I think there's an openness to it. I think there are a lot of complications with all this. I think people feel like the spectrum of who God could be and what a religious experience looks like is so vast in people's minds, but I think the openness to it is encouraging, and I think that there are a lot of ways we Christians have an opportunity to speak in to this at this moment. I am excited about that, and hopeful about the possibilities of that, though there are challenges. So there's that. And then I think the other thing is I've been working a lot on Infuse, this kind of missional idea incubation process, and I've just really enjoyed having. I mean, it's discipleship for people who have a specific idea they want to work on.
Right.
But I have just enjoyed walking with the people who we've walked with in this. I am excited to see other people excited about it. I'm excited to be putting more effort into developing it. I don't know where it will be at the end of, I think going into this next year, there's a lot we're trying to pour into it. And there's a lot of unknowns, but I'm excited about it.
That's really cool.
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah. So answer those questions. What am I hopeful for or hope will develop? I'll tell you one thing is it's interesting. The thing that I learned this year is that I'm 50 and, the whole kind of maybe more complexity and the dying out of the idealist. And on the other hand, I actually still have that idealist, that dreamer person. And I think one of the things I have this dream and I'm hoping it will happen this year. I had this dream of just coming to church on Sunday to the space of the village being just packed with people who are eager to meet Jesus, eager to know Jesus. And I really am hopeful for an outpouring of the Holy Spirit in the lives of my people, in my community and my neighborhood and the neighborhoods of my people. I'm very excited about that. I actually think, I always dreamed that. I always pray for that. And I'm hopeful for that this year. I think in my own life, I'm pretty excited about just my relationship with my kids and watching my 2 adult children continue to grow into really godly young people and to watch them engage this world. I'm really proud of my daughter and my son, and I love our friendship, which I think is the coolest thing, because it's not necessarily guaranteed that you get to be close friends with your kids. And my kids are really particular and about asking like how we're doing, what's going on in our life. They have that family ethic, and it's not overwhelming to them. Like for me, growing up in it with my parents, I would say it's like more first generation. So I always felt like sort of like my privacy was being invaded, but so we were very careful not to do that. But yet we parented them in a way where they really like to know what's going on in our life and how we're doing and how they're doing, and talking through those things. So I'm just excited. I'm excited that they both love the village. They're both deeply involved in it. My daughter is a lead minister in our church, so it's just fun to be part of a family thing. So I'm just excited to see what God's going to do with that, how that's going to develop this year. Because, my son turned 18 in August, and so it's just fun to watch him become a young man and start doing young man things that just all of a sudden you're like, wow, like, is it just because you turned 18 or what's going on? But it's fun. It's just fun to see that. It's fun to see them grow up. So I'm excited about that. I'm hopeful to see what God's going to do with all that. So
cool.
Yeah.
That's great. Love it.
All right.
Well, so I guess that's the tail end of it,
that's
man.
That's 2023, guys.
Yeah, going into 2023.
Yeah, and this podcast has been more sparse than other years, but it's still, we put out a lot of episodes, and we really thank you for listening. And I would really hope when your new book comes out, you're working on one, right? I'm
working on one with Rod.
Yeah, when the Rod book comes out, we'll do some promotional stuff.
And then the memoir is very seed stage.
Yeah, it's not going to be out there. But the Rod one should be this year, right?
I sure think so.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll do something for that. And but we love your emails. faithoverbreakfast@gmail.com. You give us a subject, we will talk about it, most likely, unless it's just inappropriate and we can't talk about it.
Right. Yeah. But if it's within reason, we'll talk about it.
Because after how many years have we been doing this? A long, long time.
I don't even know.
Over 200 episodes.
Yeah, we've been doing this at least 7 or 8 years.
Yeah. It's a very long time.
So, yeah, you can always email us, faithoverbreakfast@gmail.com. You can always rate us. That helps us a ton. Share episodes with other people. Anytime you share one on something like social media or you email it to a friend, that makes an exponential difference. So we would just encourage you to do that. Thank you for those who do.
Yeah.
And, thank you for giving us your time and taking... putting us in your playlist. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. You've been listening to Faith Over Breakfast with Pastor Eric Siepen and Pastor Andy Littleton. Please share us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thank you.